Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Israel is enabling more aid into war-torn Gaza, facilitating humanitarian airdrops and convoys of trucks in the past 2 days. The move follows an international outcry over reports of starvation in the Palestinian territory amid the war with Hamas. U.S. President Donald Trump, who blamed Hamas last week for failing to agree to a new ceasefire and hostages deal, acknowledged starvation in Gaza in remarks to reporters on Monday. The Gaza negotiations are not dead, though there hasn't been any significant movement since the U.S. and Israel recalled their teams from the Qatari capital Doha last week. Israeli media reported on Monday that some ministers in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet are considering a full occupation of Gaza and/or annexing parts of the Strip if Hamas does not agree to a new deal. Meanwhile, international pressure towards a Palestinian state is growing. The United Nations held a Saudi and France-led conference on the matter on Monday and Tuesday, following French President Emmanuel Macron's announcement that Paris will soon recognize a Palestinian state. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Tuesday that the United Kingdom will recognize a Palestinian state in September unless Israel agrees to a new ceasefire and other conditions. Also of note is remarks on Monday from Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan, who endorsed the Palestinian Authority as the, quote, only legitimate representative of Palestinians, adding weight to the PA's efforts to return to Gaza and disarm Hamas. In this episode, we hear from the head of Al Monitor's Israel Pulse, Rina Bassist. Rina takes us through the Israeli decision to allow more aid to Gaza, how pressure from Trump compares to that of European states, and whether an annexation of Gaza is realistic. Hope you enjoy. Rina, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Thank you, Adam. Nice to be here.
Rina, first thing I want to ask you, what is Israel's strategy regarding the delivery of aid to Gaza, or what is the thinking here?
First of all, we have to remember that the Israeli cabinet decided already on July 15 to expand the entry of humanitarian aid to Gaza. And after this decision of July 15, the Israeli government actually opened one additional crossing point, the Zikim crossing point in the north of the Gaza Strip. So we have two main points of access for the trucks carrying the humanitarian aid. We have this new Zikim passage, and then we have the traditional Kerem Shalom passage in the south of the Gaza Strip, which is just near the Rafah Egyptian crossing point. Having said that, of course, the real push, what we're seeing as since in the past 2-3 days, started on Sunday when Israel really started expanding the entry of humanitarian aid. And we have seen on Sunday the entry of about 120 trucks coming in from both crossing points, 180 on Monday, and hopefully this number will continue to increase until we arrive at, hopefully in a matter of a few days, to 500 or 600 trucks, which was the number of trucks that used to come into the Gaza Strip until the month of March, when Israel really blocked the entry to the enclave. We are also seeing, apart from the entry of these trucks, we are also seeing the parachuting of aid from the air, first by Tzal, and that was a premiere in the night between Sunday and Monday. The Israeli army never did that before. And we have also seen yesterday the parachuting of aid by Egypt and by Jordan. We're expecting next week that Germany, the Brits, and also probably France will also join these efforts. So I would say that since Sunday, there is really a big effort to respond to the international campaign, the international pressure accusing Israel of starving Gaza, and the Israeli government is really trying to use all the means, either by the terrestrial crossing points or by air, to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into the Strip. And to all these efforts, I should also add that the Israeli army is currently securing several routes inside the Gaza Strip to enable the humanitarian organizations and the UN agencies that are operating on the ground, to enable them to transfer hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid that were stuck, so to say, in the south of the Gaza Strip, near the Kerem Shalom and the Rafah crossings. The humanitarian organizations were saying they cannot distribute all of these tons of humanitarian because the moment the trucks started moving, they were attacked by criminal gangs. So the Israeli army is now securing routes that should enable all of this humanitarian aid to reach all the people, all the Gazans that need it so much.
And Rina, just a quick follow-up. Before this Western pressure and international pressure in recent days, why do you think Israel did not allow more aid in the weeks before?
Well, there are two things. First of all, we have the negotiations going on. And you know that expanding the humanitarian aid was part of the demands made by Hamas. And Israel was saying that's very good. We would like to expand the humanitarian aid, but Hamas also has to compromise from its side and show its willingness to reach an agreement that would allow the release of the 50 hostages that are still inside the Gaza Strip, and of course the ceasefire, which we are all hoping for. But there was also other things, because Israel was claiming that a large part of the humanitarian aid that was entering into the Gaza Strip was looted, was recuperated by Hamas people and by other criminal groups, and was not reaching, in fact, the Gazan population. That was the Israeli explanation why it was stopping or limiting the entry of humanitarian aid, and not the influx that we are seeing now of all these dozens and hopefully hundreds of trucks that are coming.
And how are President Trump's recent comments acknowledging or saying that there has been some starvation in Gaza? How is that being perceived in Israel and by the government?
I think President Trump is saying what many other countries are saying. He's saying the same thing that France is saying. He's saying the same thing that Germany is saying. He's saying the same thing as the United Kingdom is saying, and we see the result. I mean, of course, when President Trump says it, it has much more effect on the Israeli government than if you compare it to declarations by other Western leaders. And the result is there, that Israel is indeed expanding significantly the entry of humanitarian aid. So, I mean, we could only hope that each such comment of President Donald Trump would only help to increase this influx. It's important to say that President Trump, we all know his relationship with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the sort of leverage he has over the Israeli government. And while he already made several comments about the suffering of the Gazans, he didn't pressure until last week. He didn't pressure apparently Israel enough to arrive to the situation in which we have now. And he was not using, so to say, this joint victory of the US and of Israel over Iran. We remember that it was President Trump who ordered for the American army to join the Israeli campaign and to attack the Fordo and two other Iranian nuclear sites. And we would have thought that this enormous effort by the American president to defend the state of Israel, that he would leverage that into pressuring Prime Minister Netanyahu on the issue of the humanitarian aid. He didn't do it until this week, but now, as I said, the winds are changing.
Going back to the Gaza ceasefire talks, Israeli media is reporting that the Israeli cabinet is considering annexing Gaza, or parts of it, if Hamas doesn't agree to a deal. Is this threat to annex parts of Gaza a realistic possibility?
It is difficult to say because, first of all, I don't see the Knesset adopting such a measure. For the moment, I would say that Prime Minister Netanyahu is using this threat on two levels. On the one hand, he is using it, of course, to pressure Hamas because we are in the midst of negotiations with Hamas for the release of the hostages and for a ceasefire in Gaza, even though these negotiations, for the moment, we don't have any teams in Doha, but the negotiations do continue. So first of all, I think he's using it as leverage, as means to pressure Hamas into advancing towards an agreement. And then, of course, on the other hand, it's also a signal that he is sending to his own coalition, to his far-right partners, saying to them, look, I'm with you, I'm embracing the ideas that you're putting on the table. I promise that we will go all the way in defeating Hamas. And indeed, if we don't reach an agreement, then we will continue with the war, and we will even annex parts of the Gaza Strip to secure to ensure the security of the Israelis. So I think for the moment it's a political tool that Netanyahu is using to threaten both sides, so to say. At the end of the day, I mean, it's not a measure that the Prime Minister can decide upon by himself, and we could expect an enormous international campaign against any such idea. So I find it very difficult to think that it's really going to be transformed from a threat into a real action.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Rina Bassist after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision-makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com. That's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Rina, in recent days, we've seen increased pressure on a two-state solution and also a Palestinian Authority return to Gaza. I'm speaking specifically about the ongoing United Nations conference and the announcements by the UK and France. How do you think the Netanyahu government views this increased pressure towards a two-state solution?
Well, you know, on the one hand, we've just spoken about the international pressure that brought us to this point where the humanitarian, the transfer of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip has been significantly increased. So on the one hand, we can say that international pressure is working, and especially when we're talking about pressure coming from the Trump administration. Having said that, I don't think the international pressure, I don't think this conference that was held yesterday and today in New York, led by the Saudis and by the French on the two-state solution, I don't think it will convince Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right government to engage in any talks with the Palestinian Authority. Mr. Netanyahu had said several times that he's not going to enter into any dialogue with President Mahmoud Abbas. And while he did recognize in 2009, in his famous Bar-Ilan speech, he did recognize the two-state solution. I mean, that was many years ago, several governments ago, and the composition of the current government with the ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, I think it would be completely unrealistic to think that the current government would engage, would relaunch any talks with the Palestinians, with the Palestinian Authority. To have such a dialogue, to advance on the two-state solution, we would have to wait until we have elections in Israel and perhaps a new government that would be more inclined to take that route.
Rina, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting on these topics.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.